Putin army fled in Belgorod, Russian rebels seized 4 armored vehicles of Putin. Newsweek ran an article titled "Pillaging Inside Russia" as defectors claim to have taken trophy equipment, which means confiscation inside Russia when insurgents claim to have obtained treason equipment. We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese. Ilya Ponomarev, a Russian politician in exile who is the political representative for the militant group, said a Russian anti-Vladimir Putin militia crossed the Belgorod region bordering Ukraine on Monday and captured it. Some Russian trophy equipment. They captured a lot of trophy equipment, Ponomarev, the only member of Russia's parliament to vote against Moscow's annexation of Crimea in 2014, said from Kiev, where he now lives. Ponomarev was referring to the Russian Freedom Corps, formed in March 2022, weeks after Russia's invasion of Ukraine began. It includes defectors from the Russian armed forces, as well as Russian and Belarusian volunteers. The Russian Freedom Corps in Belgorod said it had seized a Russian BTR-82A armored personnel carrier. Russia's Freedom Corps, established in March 2022, entered Russia's Belgorod region with the Russian Volunteer Corps on Monday. The Corps claimed to have captured Kazinka and said that their units had entered the small town of Graveron. Ponomarev said that so far, the Army Corps has captured 4 BTR-82A armored personnel carriers, the main armored vehicle of Russia. This vehicle is manufactured by the Russian Military Industry Company and used by the militaries of Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan and Belarus. Ponomarev said soldiers of the Army Corps are entrenched in Belgorod, and the fighters are consolidating their positions in the area. The exiled politician told Newsweek on Monday that the Corps, declared a terrorist organization by Russia's Supreme Court in March, was created with the aim of liberating Russia from Putinism. When asked if Legion fighters intend to enter other cities or regions in Russia, Ponomarev said, "We will see how things play out. Currently, there are not enough forces to liberate all of Russia. The number of soldiers of the Legion is unknown." Just before it was reported that these groups had infiltrated Russia's Belgorod region, the Corps published a video on its social media channels calling for an end to the dictatorship led by Putin. "We are Russians just like you," one member says in the video while standing in front of a group of his teammates. "We want our children to grow up in peace and become free people so they can travel, study and be happy in a free country. The Putin regime is rotten by corruption, lies, censorship, restriction of freedoms and repression," adding that it is time to end the dictatorship of the Kremlin. Vyacheslav Gladkov, governor of the Belgorod region, said that a sabotage and reconnaissance group of the Ukrainian armed forces had infiltrated the area and that Russian authorities were taking the necessary measures to eliminate the enemy. The Kremlin said Putin was aware of an attempt by a Ukrainian sabotage group to break into the Belgorod region, while Ukrainian intelligence said that volunteers from the Russian Army Corps and Volunteer Corps had entered the area to launch an operation to create a security zone to protect Ukrainian civilians. The Russian Volunteer Corps, founded in the summer of 2022 and led by prominent thinker Denis Nikitin, has claimed responsibility for a recent incursion into Russia's Bryansk region. The Corps said on its Telegram channel on Monday that its fighters are in Russia, publishing a short clip showing members standing in front of traffic signs in the Belgorod region. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Defense Ministry by email for comment. 2. Kiev says Russia is being pushed back at Bakhmut as Ukraine retakes some buildings. Newsweek had a report titled "Russia pushed back in Bakhmut as Ukraine retakes a number of buildings, Kiev," which means, Kiev says Russia is being pushed back in Bakhmut as Ukraine retakes some buildings. We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese through Thuy Con's presentation. Ukraine repelled Russian forces in the city of Bakhmut and recaptured several buildings, a spokesman for the Ukrainian armed forces said. Eastern Ukrainian Forces spokesman Serhiy Cherevity said Ukrainian forces were holding firmly in the southwestern part of the city, contradicting claims made by Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, who on Saturday said the wars were fighting. His troops captured the town in the eastern region of Donetsk, where fierce fighting has raged since last summer. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, over the weekend denied that the city had been taken. Bakhmut was not temporarily occupied by the Russian Federation until today, he told a press conference at the G7 summit in Hiroshima, Japan. The president correctly said that the city was basically razed. "The enemy is destroying it every day with massive airstrikes and artillery, and our units report that the situation is extremely difficult," Cherevity said in an update. Our army is holding fortifications and several facilities in the southwestern part of the city. There are tough fights, he added. Ukraine's armed forces are trying to put pressure on the flanks, haunt the invaders and, if possible, counterattack. The Ukrainian armed forces said that the enemy continues offensive actions and that the fight for the city of Bakhmut continues. Russian state agencies have quoted the Kremlin as saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated the Wagner army and the Russian army on the liberation of Bakhmut. Cherevity, in an interview with Ukrainian radio NV, said there were two important reasons why Prigozhin appeared to have lied about Bakhmut's victory. There are several reasons. First, they needed at least a win, because they felt humiliated in front of the world by not being able to capture the regional center for more than 9 months, even though they threw their arms around into a large force of the Second Army of the world. Secondly, as I said, the Wagner terrorist organization has been destroyed. This organization has suffered a great loss of personnel. Prigozhin really wanted to crawl away, lick his wounds like he said. Newsweek was unable to independently verify the statements from both Russia and Ukraine, and has reached out to the Russian Foreign Ministry via email for comment. The American Institute for the Study of War, or ISW for short, has assessed that the Wagner Group's claim of victory in Bakhmut, if any, is purely symbolic. 3. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visits Marines on the front lines. May 23 is celebrated as the National Day of the Ukrainian Marines, and the President met with servicemen on the front lines. Today I am here to congratulate our soldiers on the Day of the Ukrainian Marines. Glory to all defenders of Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been working almost non-stop for the past few days. After traveling to the Middle East to speak with the Arab League, he went to Hiroshima, Japan to persuade allies to support the F-16 fighter jets. Immediately after returning to Kiev, he visited Ukrainian Marines. 4. Russia launched Shahid drones to attack Ukraine, all of them were down. The Russians lost 40 artillery systems around the city of Bakhmut, and 1 helicopter. On the night of May 22 and early 23, Russia again attacked the territory of Ukraine with 4 Shahid suicide drones. Ukrainian air defense units destroyed them all. Spokesman of the Ukrainian Air Force, Colonel Yuri Ianat, said the above. In the past 25 hours, the Russian military has carried out 20 missile attacks. The enemy fired cruise missiles at settlements in the Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia and Kharkiv regions, as well as Iskander-M ballistic missiles and S-300 guided surface-to-air missiles. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on Tuesday afternoon, May 23, Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said that all efforts by Russian troops to stop the Ukrainian army's advance on the flanks of Bakhmut city had failed. Lose. In the past 24 hours, 480 Russian soldiers were eliminated from the battle along with 4 tanks, 12 armored vehicles, 40 artillery systems. In particular, the Ukrainian Army's 24th Separate Mechanized Brigade shot down a Russian Mi-24 helicopter. Overall, from February 24, 2022 to May 23, about 204,360 Russian soldiers were eliminated from the battle. Total combat losses of the invaders also included 3,789 tanks, 7,419 armored vehicles, 3,318 artillery systems, 565 mass launch missile systems, 327 air defense combat systems, 309 aircraft, 295 helicopters, 2,864 drones, 1,015 cruise missiles, 18 warships, 6,139 troop and fuel transport vehicles, and 433 special equipment units. 5. Why Russia's super jet will fail to Ukraine's F-16. Newsweek had an article titled, Why Russia's superior jet will lose against Ukrainian F-16s, which translates to, Why Russia's super jets will fail to Ukraine's F-16s. We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese through the presentation of Tai Van. Experts told Newsweek that the Russian Su-35 fighter jet may prove to be superior or equal to fast American-made jets, but will eventually fall when pitted against any. Which F-16 was promised to Kiev and was flown by Ukrainian pilots. Russia has used the Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jet, hailed as a 4th-generation aircraft with 5th-generation technology, in the ongoing war in Ukraine. Ukraine's Air Force said on Monday that Russia's Air Force had lost a Su-35 fighter jet after it plowed into Ukraine's territorial waters in the southern Kherson region. of the country on Sunday. The Russian Ministry of Defense has not commented on this at the time of writing. The mission of air superiority in the war in Ukraine has become more central as Ukraine appears to be moving closer to receiving Western-made fighters, such as the F-16, that Kyiv has come to love. Long ago demand. Experts say the F-16, which attracts more attention than other Western-made fighters, is the most likely candidate to upgrade the Ukrainian Air Force. There are several versions of the F-16, and it is unclear which model Ukraine should theoretically receive. Ukraine currently operates a fleet of Soviet-era jets that are essentially similar to the Russian Air Force. Experts say that the delivery of F-16s to Ukraine not only marks a major technological transition for Western aircraft, but also a move towards NATO's military doctrine. There are a number of obstacles, both political and logistical, in supplying Ukraine with aircraft, but conflict observers are increasingly confident that Ukraine will soon receive a commitment to provide F-16s. According to former British military officer Frank Ledwidge, the Russian Su-35 is unlikely to directly confront the US-made F-16 in Ukraine. But the Su-35 is considered one of Russia's most advanced 4.5-generation fighters, he told Newsweek, and is specially designed to shoot down planes like the F-16. The Su-35 is a modernized version of the Su-27 fighter jet, designed to significantly increase engagement effectiveness against air, land, and sea targets, according to the United Aircraft Corporation, UAC for short, an aerospace and defense corporation owned by the Russian government. According to UAC, the first flight of the Su-35 took place in February 2008. In theory, it could be argued that the Su-35 has an edge over the F-16s Ukraine can afford, but that doesn't tell the whole story, said David Jordan, co-director of the company. Freeman Institute of Aeronautics and Space at King's College London, UK. The specifications of the Su-35 could suggest that it is a better aircraft in many ways, former RAF senior commander and Air Marshal Greg Bagwell told Newsweek, but the real picture is much more complicated than that. According to experts, there are several other factors to consider when comparing the two jets. Although the F-16 airframe is decades old and Ukraine is unlikely to get the latest avionics, the way the jet is used will make a decisive difference on the battlefield. Jordan said some of Russia's air combat tactics seem to be too rigid, adding that this could get in the way of them, no matter what vehicle they are flying in. Jordan added that the quality of the pilots is a key factor. Although no country has yet promised to supply Ukraine with F-16s, several countries, including the United States, have pledged to assist in training Ukrainian pilots on this advanced aircraft. On Saturday, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that as the training progresses, in the coming months, we will work with our allies to determine when the aircraft will be delivered, who will deliver and how many of them. Jordan added, "We haven't seen much evidence that the Russians have started the war with any particular skill set superior to the Ukrainians." Ledwidge said the short-term training for Ukrainian pilots will allow them to use some of the F-16s they receive. But being able to use them at full capacity will take years, he added. Experts emphasized that the situational awareness that the aircraft provides the pilots of each side is also important. If the Russians are flying around and know roughly the location of the Ukrainian plane while the Ukrainians know almost exactly where the Russians are, then the Ukrainians are likely to have an advantage even before they are inside each other's vision, and vice versa, Jordan said. Jordan added, "I think that the F-16s in Ukraine's hands will be a formidable challenge." Retired Air Force Major General Andrew Curtis, formerly of the Royal Air Force, said, "In terms of the F-16's ability to take on the Russian Su-35, that will depend on the weaponry for the air that the Ukrainians have. When it comes to aerial combat, the F-16 is still one of the best in the world. However, Russian pilots are likely to try and fight an independent battle, using medium and long-range missiles. If they can do this successfully, that could tip the balance in favor of the Su-35. As of Monday, Russia has lost 3 Su-35s since the start of an all-out war in Ukraine last February, according to Dutch open source Oryx. However, this figure only includes visually confirmed losses, so the real number could be much higher. Mr. Bagwell added, "The Su-35 was relatively infrequent throughout the war, which raises questions about how many Russia has and how good they are." Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Defense Ministry for comment via email. 6. Intelligence Bulletin of the UK Department of Defense Intelligence. Between May 19 and 22, 2023, Russian security forces most likely clashed with factions at least 3 locations in Russia's Belgorod Oblast, near the Ukrainian border. The identities of the factions have yet to be confirmed, but anti-Russian groups have claimed responsibility. The most serious incident took place near the town of Graverin. As well as small arms gunfights, there has been an increase in drone attacks or indirect fire near incidents. Russia has evacuated several villages and deployed additional security forces to the area. Russia is facing an increasingly serious multi-sectoral security threat in its border regions, with the loss of warplanes, improvised explosive device attacks on railways and now its direct factional action. Russia will almost certainly use these facts to support the official narrative that they were victims of the war. 7. Ukrainian pilots begin training to fly F-16s in Poland. The European Union's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell said training for Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16 jets had begun in Poland, after the United States gave the green light. He told a meeting of European Union defense ministers in Brussels. "I'm glad that finally the training of F-16 pilots for Ukraine has begun in several countries. It will take time, but the sooner the better. For example, in Poland." A European diplomat, speaking to AFP on condition of anonymity, confirmed training had begun in Poland. The move comes after U.S. President Joe Biden last week allowed Kyiv pilots to train on U.S.-made jets that Ukraine says they need to fend off the invasion. Russia. Poland, a neighbor of Ukraine and one of the country's staunchest supporters, has stated for months that it is ready to train Ukrainian pilots on the jets. The country was once Ukraine's main training center for soldiers as well as a source of weapons for Kyiv. According to AFP, Dutch Defense Minister Kajsa Ollongren said that the European Union meeting would be the first step towards supplying Western aircraft to Kyiv. "We will continue to discuss with our allies and with countries that may have F-16s available that next step." 8. The Kremlin claims that Ukrainian fighters are still active in Belgorod. While the Ukrainian side blamed the attacks inside Russia on Russian anti-Putin fighters fighting government troops, the Kremlin said on Tuesday that Ukrainian fighters were still active in the region. Russia's Belgorod border, a day after local authorities announced an anti-terror operation there to repel what they called a sabotage group from Ukraine. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Russia's military operation in Ukraine was launched to prevent such incursions. Reuters reports he says more effort is needed on the Russian side to prevent such incidents. The group involved has identified itself as an ethnic Russian anti-Kremlin militia. When asked about this, Peskov said that there are many people of Russian origin in Ukraine and that the attackers are still Ukrainian fighters. Regional Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said residents from 9 settlements in the region had to be evacuated due to the incident. Vyacheslav Gladkov, governor of the Belgorod region in Russia, gave an update on the situation there. In it, he reiterated that an anti-terrorist order had been issued and that cleaning up the area from the aftermath continues. He claimed that many settlements were already under mortar and artillery. Mass-launched rocket systems operated on residential buildings and civilians. Explosive devices were dropped from 4 rotor drones. As a result, 12 civilians were injured. Damage was recorded in 29 private houses and 3 cars. There is currently no electricity in 14 settlements. We will begin restoration work when operational conditions permit. Earlier, he issued a video statement warning residents to stay away from the affected area. 9. Former Ukraine intelligence chief says missile maker Kinzhal cheated Putin. General Valery Zaluzny, chief of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Army, said that during the night of May 15 and 16, Russia attacked from 3 angles using missiles in the air, at sea, and on land. All 18 Russian rockets fired at Kyiv were shot down. The biggest insult to Putin is that of these 18 missiles, 6 are Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, which Putin boasts are invincible because they fly at more than 10 times the speed of sound. In response to this humiliation, Putin ordered the prosecution of all the scientists who developed the Kinzhal hypersonic missile. Newsweek had a report titled "Kinzhal Missile Makers Deceived Putin," says Ukrainian ex-intel chief, which means former intelligence chief of Ukraine says missile maker Kinzhal cheated Putin. We invite you and your brothers and sisters to follow the translation into Vietnamese through Thuy Con's presentation. According to the former head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, the developers of Russia's Kinzhal hypersonic missile program, which means dagger, cheated Russian President Vladimir Putin. Mykola Malamaz, head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service until 2010, told Ukrainian media that developers advertised the missile as a superweapon, but its effectiveness was not respond to this hype. Its capabilities have also been questioned by Western analysts. This comes after the Kremlin said scientists working on the development of the Kinzhal missile system had been arrested and would face very serious charges, but declined to provide further details. Information. In an open letter published online, colleagues of Anatoly Maslov, Alexander Shiplyuk and Valery Zvejintsev protested the arrest of 3 outstanding aerodynamics scientists. The letter from members of the Christianovich Institute of Theoretical and Applied Mechanics in Siberia in Novosibirsk said 3 men were arrested even before Ukraine shot down the Kinzhal rockets on suspicion of treason. Shiplyuk was arrested in August 2022 and Maslov was detained by Russian authorities in June, according to Russian state media. Zvejintsev's arrest was not previously reported, but took place on April 7, according to Reuters, citing local media. Russian physicist Dmitry Kocher, another scientist from Novosibirsk who was arrested in Siberia last summer for treason, is believed to have died of terminal cancer in Moscow after transferred by the Russian security services. The whole society is shocked and outraged by his death, the open letter read. The Kinzhal hypersonic missile system was hailed by Putin as invincible in the world. Russia says the air-launched missile, also designated by NATO as Killjoy, can accelerate to 10 times the speed of sound and has a range in excess of 2,000 kilometers, or 1,250 miles. However, Western experts have questioned Kinzhal's capabilities and its designation as a hypersonic weapon. Last week, the Ukrainian military said it had successfully shot down 6 Kinzhals fired in an overnight attack. Kyiv previously said it intercepted a Kinzhal using the US-made Patriot air defense system, but Russia denied it. Malamuz said the scientists were arrested after a Kinzhal attack did not cause the expected damage. The Kinzhal developers have clearly identified Kinzhal as a non-existent superweapon, Malamuz said in an interview published Monday, adding that they've really lied to Putin. Reports of intercepted Kinzhal attacks indicate that the attacks end in total failure, Malamuz told Ukraine's TSN news agency. Therefore, the fate of these hypersonic missile developers will also end in total failure, because they have weakened the strategic basis of Russia's combat capabilities, Malamuz said. More. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Defense Ministry and the Christianovich Institute for comment via email. In the open letter, the 3 scientists' colleagues said they knew each of them a patriot and a decent person who was incapable of doing what the investigating agency suspected of them. We are not only afraid for the fate of our colleagues, the open letter continued. We just don't understand how to keep doing our jobs. Kinzhal was unveiled by Putin in 2018 as part of an advanced weapons package, and Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said in August 2022 that the missile had shown its wonderful characteristics in the region. Ukraine. Military expert David Hambling previously told Newsweek that a true hypersonic missile would be very difficult to intercept by air defenses, but stressed that all indications are that Kinzhal is simply a rocket air-launched ballistic missile with very limited ability to navigate.